mugshots, upcoming trials, tidbits we learned from family members' interviews after the verdict, and the aftermath of Letecia Stauch and Lori Daybell. Buckle your seatbelts up, Sofa Squad, because we got a lot to cover in today's video. Hello Sofa Squad, and welcome back to the sofa, which is behind me, and Mr. Roscoe is holding it down. He is actually awake and hanging out with us today. And my name is Paul, and like I said in my little intro there, we're going to be discussing a lot of different things, and we're actually going to be discussing both cases in this video, kind of like just an aftermath, things we learned from the family members, some of their interviews, a whole bunch of different things, and we're going to start off with the mugshots. Okay, now the way the video will work is some things I might reference an article that I'll put on the screen. Other things I might take some clips from some interviews and use those as talking points. And again, these are just my opinions. This is for entertainment only. I urge you to do your own research, come to your own conclusions about all the cases we talk about, and then talk about it down in the comment section below. Now, before we jump in too far and too deep, we need to give a warm sofa welcome to the sponsor that teamed up with us today to help keep the doors open and the sofa cushion fluffed. I'm so glad Care Of reached out to me and the Sofa Squad to partner for this video. So who is Care Of? Well, let's take a look inside and see what they're all about. Care Of is a subscription service that ships high quality, personalized vitamins, supplements, and powders very conveniently to your door every month. So you can take this short, really in-depth quiz about your lifestyle and health goals, and it gives you a personalized, doctor-backed recommendation. Now, one thing I really love about this is that you can retake this quiz anytime to switch the packs up as your lifestyle and needs change. I've really enjoyed keeping them in my bathroom and making them part of my morning get ready routine. And so what I have found is also, like, if I'm running late and on the go or whatever, this reminds me just to grab them, take them, have them in the car with my water, coffee, whatever. And I don't forget to grab the pouch when I do that. And I really love that. I love the packaging that these came in. They've also made the process of learning about vitamins, getting into the routine, super easy. And that is an absolute must for me. If it's not easy like that and laid out for me, it's not going to work. Now, I also love how transparent they are with what you're getting. The ingredients, making access to all that information easy. It's just one of those things that I've really enjoyed with them. And again, that's an absolute necessity for me to really get into something. So my pouch, I really wanted it to be geared towards, like, energy, stress, that type thing. And their focus blend that they sent me, I've really enjoyed this. I feel like it's really given me a boost when I'm in that moment and need it. And again, I take them in the morning and I just feel like it starts my day off right. So Care Of is hooking up the Sofa Squad for 50% off your first Care Of order. Go to takecareof.com and enter code ReportingLive50. Again, for 50% off your first Care Of order, go to takecareof.com and enter code ReportingLive50. All right, be sure and check their stuff out down below. Now let's go ahead and get into it. And like I said, we're going to start off with the mugshots. Now, first up on least eligible bachelorettes, we have Miss Lori Daybell. She is rocking out some pigtails, ponytails, something. I don't know what you call that. Now, this is the first thing I thought when I saw this. Yikes, number one. But I was like, this is how she curls her hair. This is what she's been doing, or rolling it up in toilet paper rolls. Oh, no. But regardless, I was just like, oh, whoa. Interesting that she's doing this for this. It's almost like, okay, charade's over. I don't know what she was trying to pull off here. But it's just odd looking. And I mean, I think the trial has aged her, right? She obviously doesn't have access to all the things that she would on the outside. And so, yeah, I just think it's an interesting hair choice, especially given how we've been seeing her. Now let's go over to Miss Letecia. Okay, now, wow. First of all, this is what I guess about this girl. Interesting that she cleaned herself up with, because even what's his name, Al made mention about this in his like victim impact statement, that type thing. And so, her hair's clean. Again, seeing a full frontal view of her face. We're so used to seeing her in court with her face buried on the table, which, I mean, honestly, can you blame her? But I mean, looking at these mugshots, y'all, these are pure evil that we are looking at. It's so scary. But again, that's the first thing that stood out to me with Letecia. is just, oh, now she washes her hair. Now we get to see her face forward, so on and so forth. So, yeah, there's a lot to take in there, everybody. Now, also, they did not waste time getting her booked. And here we see here, El Paso County, Colorado, Letecia Stalk has been formally booked into the Colorado Department of Corrections to begin serving her life sentence following her conviction on all counts this week and the death of her 11-year-old stepson, Gannon. They couldn't wait to get her out of there and into the prison system. I mean, can you imagine? They probably were waiting there for her to come back to the jail or whatever with her stuff packed. Like, okay, let's go. You know what I'm saying? She's probably a nightmare. And I personally think that when she gets to where she's going to learn some hard lessons, because let me tell you what, that mouth, it's going to get her into a lot of trouble. That's just my opinion. Now, we're going to use the discussion of Letecia to kind of, move us into the first thing we're going to be discussing. And the first thing we're going to be discussing are some interviews that Landon, Gannon Stalk's biological mother, gave after the convictions, after the trial. And I've picked some clips to watch. We're going to hear some from Al as well. And because I felt like I learned some things that I was really questioning, whether it be like on a personal level. If you follow me for a while, you might have heard me say one of the things that I'm interested in with true crime is obviously the psychological part, whether that be from the criminal standpoint or from watching how brave a lot of the victims and the survivors, victims' loved ones are when they're thrust into these situations. Obviously, it's not by choice, right? And so seeing these people who are incredibly brave and they rise to these moments and what they have to say about that, what we have to learn about that. And I felt like Landon was full of a lot of information like that was really inspiring to me, as well as Al. And then we'll also discuss, and we'll get to that too, not to exclude them. We're going to talk about them next. Some things that Larry and Kay had to say, because I've learned so much information about things that I admire about how they have handled themselves as well throughout all of this. But I just want to go ahead and cover Landon and Al's first. So what I'm going to do now is I'll put a clip up here, and we're just going to use it as a discussion point, a talking point, and we'll do it that way. So here we go.
Can you talk about how you found the strength to sit there day in and day out in the trial with the defendant just a few feet away?
As you guys know, as anybody, not just a parent, you would have anger sitting there, especially with someone that is so emotionless. But Gannon was my reminder. He wouldn't want me to mess up his story. So I feel like I know he was there with me, and I had to get it out. Didn't feel like I needed to practice. I just needed to get it out. And I could have said some harmful things, and that would have taken away from who Gannon is. And so he allowed me to get through it.
Now, this is an excellent question because, watching this and being like, oh my God, how are they keeping it together, right? And this is one of those things that I'm talking about is, I just admire this so much, how they were able to go to court and all through these years putting up with Letecia and this absolute BS that she brought. And to hear her say, you know what, Gannon wouldn't want his story ruined by that. And, I had to get it out. I had to do this. And, I just really admire what she had to say about this because, watching this, I was just like, oh my God, I would have wanted to have lunged over everything. And especially when we learn more about what she has to say with Letecia taking kind of underhanded jabs at them and stuff like that. So let's continue.
You mentioned in your victim impact statement that she had everyone fooled.
She did.
Now, this is something that so many of us have discussed, and we're going to hear her go more in depth about this, as well as I'll go into it, which is she had everybody fooled. Yes, there was some say red flag material there that we'll hear about, but nothing that would lead someone to think of this type thing having taken place, right? No one ever thinks this. This is a last resort in these situations, right? Someone can be toxic and you still not think, oh, they're going to do something this horrendous.
We're talking about her fooling everyone, so many people that were in her sphere. Is there anything looking back now in retrospect that you think that's what that was? Any red flag that you can think of now that you know everything that you know?
When knowing Tisha for quite some time, she was a friend to me in a sense. She taught with me, so that I couldn't say that there were red flags. There were times where I did not see her, in the picture. Normally she was always someone that was always involved. And then there was like a short period where she wasn't. And I was a little concerned, but not to the effect that I ever imagined that any of this would ever have happened. I trusted her.
Now, this is what I'm talking about. Yeah, there might have been some things here or there, but you just don't expect this, right? Now, another big thing for me to learn from this was, and I should say it this way. So when this first went down and I didn't know too much about the case and that type thing, I was like, oh my gosh, like what would that be like to have your new spouse murder your son? Like, how would you feel as the parent? How would the other parent feel? What I'm getting at is, I was viewing it from the standpoint of that, like, Landon didn't really know Letecia. There wasn't a history there, that type of thing. So when I learned that there was this history, they knew each other, that all this stuff was there, it made more sense. And so I was like, okay, wow, I see the dynamic of the relationships now. And even though that's clear to me to see, like, okay, I get it, I'm like, it just makes it sting that much worse, right? Because it's like, whoa, not that there's like a better way it should be, or like, oh, if they didn't know each other, it wouldn't be as bad. I mean, it's horrible, right? But to know that that level of betrayal went that deep, right? I was just like, oh my gosh. That's the level of depravity that Letecia took this to. And so hearing that, I was like, oh, wait, these two women weren't strangers to each other, or in passing, like that type thing. I'm like, these two women knew each other, in addition to Leticia's relationship with Al, Leticia's relationship with Gannon. I mean, it's absolutely sickening when you look at the level of evil and vileness that came out of her, after all these years of knowing these people to the degree that she did.
I've always kind of looked back and wanted to see if there were signs, and I can't say that there were any. She was someone I trusted. Like, I could, when I was in the hospital with my daughter, like, we talked on the phone, and we would even say we loved each other, because we had to get past some things that had happened earlier in our lives, but it was nothing like this.
And again, that's what I'm talking about right there. It's absolutely shocking. Absolutely shocking that she was able to maintain and carry herself in this way, and then to go to this level of depravity.
By no means. And Gannon never would have shown it anyways. Like, he would always tell me, I love everybody, and he would ask to talk to her. And I just don't understand the amount of love that someone could have individually, Gannon, myself, and I know Al, and then she took it for granted. So,
such a key word here, took it for granted. When you look at all that Letecia had, right? Gannon, family, daughter, life, all this stuff. Look at the level that she took that for granted. Look at what she threw away. Look at what she destroyed, right? That is another part where I'm like, how sickening. And that's one thing that I think we see with a lot of these cases where these people do this. Look at Lori. Look at what she did, right? She had this amazing life that a lot of people would kill for. Numerous people surrounding her that sat here and said, we would have taken the kids. We would have taken the kids. And look at how these people, and what I mean by that is these perpetrators, the Loris, the Leticias, the Daryls, all these people we study, right? How much they take for granted life and those around them.
Was there a certain point after you learned he was missing that, well, let me ask you about when you first heard he was missing. Did it cross your mind that it could have been Letecia?
Oh, yeah. Right at the first. I received a phone call from Tisha saying that something about Gannon had accidents, and I'm going to fix this. Gannon did not have accidents anymore. He outgrew that. He was on medicines that caused constipation, and he was supposed to take medicines to fix that. And so I just don't understand the misconception of that whole thing.
Now, this part was interesting to me because hearing her say, like, yeah, right off the bat, like, things did not add up immediately. Because remember, from the public's point of view, you know, I'm watching this unfold and you're like, you know, something's weird because of her interviews and her behavior. You're seeing these reports of her, like, living in these Facebook groups and, like, just weird stuff that you just typically do not see a concerned parent doing over their child missing, right? But then to hear insider information of, yeah, you know what, I knew A, B, and C was off like that. Now, what a sinking feeling that must have been to be like, whoa, okay, we're getting ready to open a massive can of worms here.
It sounds like you said that initially when you heard that he was missing that you suspected Letecia.
Yes, because she acted funny. Because I hadn't talked to her. Like that was a time period that she wasn't in the picture, and I hadn't talked to her. And so she called me on Gannon's phone. And through the court process, I was the only one that she called on Gannon's phone. And that really hurt because I knew it was another jab. And I begged her to look for my child on the phone call. I talked to her every 2 hours, and it was just weird. Something about a candle, I looked for Gannon, and then she was supposed to pick me up from the airport, her and Harley. We were supposed to do this together. And just the things that just didn't make sense. I was a little off on maybe she had something to do with this, but not to the extent of taking his life.
Now, this part right here, I'm just like, oh my God, because remember, and if you watch this, the victim impact statements, and she was talking about, she meaning Landon, about Letecia taking these jabs that nobody would really know unless you're kind of the inner circle. Imagine Landon's stomach when she saw Gannon's phone number pop up on her phone. And then it was Letecia. And then to find out that's the only time that happened, like her doing that. Can you imagine your kid's missing? Oh my God, here's his number. Everything's going to be okay. And it's the woman who will find out ended up killing him. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that seems so on brand for Letecia to play that kind of a thing, that passive aggressive, you know, I'm going to do that. The fact that she took it to trial, let's just be honest, right? I think that was one last slap in their face.
I thought that maybe she had done something to get somebody's attention to be the hero at the end, but not to take Gannon.
Now, I put this in there because I thought that she was trying to do this throughout the case. She was almost like trying to pivot it to become a hero in the situation that she herself created. And so I thought it was interesting that Landon mentions this, because it's so true. I mean, she was doing it still. I think part of it is Letecia didn't think she was going to get caught, maybe, and so she was being so super confident in one sense of, we're going to find him. How dare you say he's not coming home? Blah, 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 blah. You know, mind you, she ain't going out there and helping look. She's not doing any of this stuff. She's staying away. I mean, all of her behavior is red flag material, right? But I think in the beginning she was trying to twist that around, like, okay, well, I'm going to get something out of this, right? I'm going to bring the family back together, meaning her and Al, you know, them, you know, not Landon, of course. I think she was deathly jealous of Landon. And she was trying to do that. So for Landon to say, oh, you know what, I thought she was pulling a stunt to try and be a hero or whatever, I mean, speaks volumes.
I don't really want her to share the process. I think we all know, based upon the timeline, that I think Kevin, I can't remember his last name, Kevin, he'd made, I think we're very clear of what happened. I think what's left for her to say is, I'm sorry.
And unfortunately, those are words that I do not think that they will ever hear from her. I think that she will hold those over their head as like a power trip, because in her world, she's the victim, right? I'm talking about Letecia. And I believe that Landon's right. We can kind of piece together what we think probably happened. No one will ever know except for Letecia and poor little Gannon, who obviously isn't here to tell his story. But yeah, I think she'll hold that over their heads. Now, let's kind of switch gears here and listen to a few things that Al had to say.
And I don't want to get into too much into the weeds, but there have been other situations of far less gravity than, of course, losing Gannon. There have been other situations throughout our relationship where I had to, you know, do a similar thing where, hey, something might have happened, something fairly inconsequential, but, you know, had to get to the bottom of something. And I think she referenced that as one of those phone calls is like, you're always playing FBI agent or something, not knowing I was actually sitting there with the FBI, of course, but so yeah, kind of as I testified to, kind of staying in character of FBI agent or however you want to look at it. Yeah, it was tough. It was tough not to lose my cool. I did say a few things I'm not proud of in those moments. And I asked for forgiveness, to people that had to hear it. They're like giving me the grace considering the circumstance. But
Okay, now this part was so intriguing to me because we've talked about that here at the squad, about what was it like daily life with her? What was it like if you were like, hey, who left the laundry on the floor? Basic stuff, right? Because you see how much she lies and gaslights and manipulates. So to hear Al say this, where he was, this is a thing, right? For far less worse than taking their son's life or his son's life, things of this nature, and he would have to do this. And then it makes more sense where she's like, here you go with the FBI thing. So this level of stuff was there, right? But of course, you don't ever expect something like this to escalate to a scenario of a person doing this to your child, right? It's not something that is in the forefront of our minds.
Non-consequential things. Were there any red flags with her that you see now, looking back at your life with her as your wife?
So I'm going to say, so you asked two questions, and I'm not trying to go back to court here, but first one was about when I first knew, and talk about being the suspect. So the suspect part, I'm going to leave that to the authorities. That's their lane. I think I was pretty clear in both my testimony and my statement that when I went to look for that Volkswagen Tiguan at the school where she told me it was, that was really the point in time when it shifted for me, wholeheartedly shifted. And then from there, I think you know the rest of the story, but that's really when it shifted for me.
So again, we can kind of piece this timeline together with Al, listening to the phone calls that we listened to, hearing how, him put the pieces together of how he had to deal with her, that type thing. And like he said, when that shift took place of, okay, hold on. Also listening to Landon talking about, this didn't make sense. All this stuff, bam, right out of the gate, starts not adding up. And again, if you're dealing with somebody like Letecia, who is going to, like I said, lie, gaslight, that stuff on basic things, this would be like that gut punch of having to be like, okay, wait, let's circle our mind around. She's doing this now about our missing child. You know what I mean? Like, again, you would be like, what? It would be so confusing and next level dealing with that and having to wrap your mind around every moment, every day of this reality of that sinking, and more of like, because again, you don't expect this out of someone, even if they're like a toxic type person, whatever. This is not something that we're geared to be like, oh, and they probably butchered our son and did this to him, right? It's not something that you expect.
I think the carpet incident is a great example of how I knew that was just, lack of a better word, a bunch of crap, because my children knew that people are the most important thing to me. We can get new carpet, we can get new games, we can get new houses, we can't get new people. And that's something I said to them often, and I say it still to my family today. The way we treat one another is what defines us. And that was a defining characteristic of Gannon, and I don't think he would have changed much.
Very interesting, because Letecia is probably completely the opposite, right? I mean, you heard her on the damn phone call, with him crying in the background, talking about burns on her arm. She could care on his arm, and she could care less about that. We're more concerned about fixing whatever, lying, manipulating. There's no telling just how much BS she was throwing at all these children, right? When Al was off at work or whatever. There's absolutely no telling. And to hear that Gannon was such a loving soul who, to tell his parents, I love Letecia, and it's so sad. It's so tragic.
One of my last questions has to do with something you also said in your victim impact statements about what you don't know and what the defendant has never shared, and that's your son's last words. Can you talk about that, and also what else, if anything, you wish she would share, even though I understand you want to be as far disconnected from her as possible?
So I think through life experiences, and I think a lot of us can understand this, I've accepted the fact that there's some things I may never know, and she may never share, such as the truth, such as what she actually did. I think the judge spoke about the possible order of events. anyone connected to this case directly, I would assume, and I know I have played that in my mind, how it happened, what happened, his last breath, his final words. I think it's safe to assume I may never get that information. So once again, back to the poem I referenced, that I am the captain of my soul. Do I let that poison my soul that I'll never know what my son's last words were, or how he took his last breath, or those things? No. I would not be the man I claim to be if I let that ruin me. Do I want to know? Absolutely. Does it weigh me down? I think it comes in waves, but I won't let it control me and overtake me. I expect to never talk to her again. I expect to never get those answers.
Such beautiful, inspiring words and a message that he's sitting here saying. I absolutely love it. It gives me chills. And another heartbreaking part, because when I sit there and think, and I'm like, oh my God, I cannot imagine the last words part. Now, my opinion is that she will never say that. She will hold that over their heads. Just the same as like an apology, right? She loves having that power, right? Loves having that power and that control. And so that's going to be like a lesson, like he said, of having to be like, you know what, I'm going to have to basically, I'm not going to hear these words, right? I have to learn to move on and go past that, because yeah, she is not a human being who would ever give somebody that. I mean, look at what she did. Now let's circle back and look at another interview with Landon and talk about some of that. Wow. Totally agree with her about the mother thing. Yeah, absolutely not. Strip that title away, right? Now, secondly, here we get a little more of the history of, Landon talking about how they've known each other and all this stuff, and what a slap in the face the insanity thing was, because this is BS, right? You didn't even have to not know Letecia, right, to get this. But especially to those who did know her, who had history with her, I mean, right here at the center of the case, the boy's mother. And I can only imagine where they were sitting there like, this is absolutely crazy. Can you imagine them watching the videos of her in there with the doctor, talking about Maria and this and that? I mean, can't roll my eyes hard. The fact that he stopped and said something to them, I think, is awesome. And yeah, I mean, true. Who knows what those attorneys were thinking about Letecia, right? They probably know what was up, but they had a job to do, right? And just like she said here of, you have this compassion enough to come speak to me, but, the person you're representing doesn't have an ounce of it. And yeah, that must have been like really difficult. Wow. I mean, what a question too. It's like, what would you say? And especially knowing the personality type of Letecia, it would be so difficult to hone that down into, anything without just going ballistic, right? But again, so much of the circumstances, and we can hear in like what Landon's saying, what Al's saying, make for this inward reflection of having to really dig deep within, right? And I admire all of these people for doing that. Okay, now let's switch gears and let's go to the press conference that took place after the verdict in the Lori Daybell trial, and let's listen to a few things that Larry and Kay had to say in that, and then we're going to also talk about some of the statements issued by other family members involved in that case.
You guys really embraced each other in there at the reading of the verdict. What did you say to each other in that moment?
I love you. What else can you say?
Oh my God, it gives me instant goosebumps all over, right? Larry and Kay have been so inspirational, and watching this with how, look at how she like pats him on the shoulder. They're so supportive to one another, and I admire that so much. It's so heartwarming to see a couple interact like this during a tragedy of this nature. Right now, I mean, I've got goosebumps. I'm gonna start blubbering up in the air. It's so inspiring, and to hear the things that they've had to say, which we're going to talk a little bit more about here, and again, I was so curious, what did they say? What do you do? Because remember, if you're watching in both these cases, really, they don't want huge reactions from the audience, right? The judge in the courtroom, they need to keep everything, the emotions are huge during these moments. So I was so curious, and I'm so glad they asked this question and that Larry told us.
Next question.
Larry, what is your final message to Lori Vallow?
My final message to Lori. Y'all ready? Turn out the lights. The party's over. They say that all good things must end. Lori, it ended.
Amen, brother. Amen. And it feels like that for her. I mean, I hope in my mind that she realizes that. And I think that's one thing I've wanted to see from her, which I don't think she would give us. Just like Letecia wouldn't give those last words or sorry, anything like that. I don't think, number one, Lori would do that. But number two, I wanted to see something from her that she understands the severity of her actions, that she understands what really truly happened here, and that more importantly she cares, right, that it affected her. But I guess that's like trying to get blood from a turnip, right, because she's the one who calls them, right, she's part of it. So but again, incredibly inspiring words from Larry. He has a really good way of expressing himself and knowing what to say in moments like this.
Jay, what about you? How do you feel like Jay thinks about the tell us what it was like? Her thoughts?
Can I have a
Yeah.
we are elated with this. There was some doubt we would get all of them, all guilty, but we did it. The prosecution is amazing. The law enforcement is amazing. They became our family, and we're keeping most of them for the rest of our life as family. And even you news people, we've made great friends with you guys, and journalists. News journalists. Anyway, it's great. Our JJ now, maybe we can get him and put him to rest, as well as Tylee, and do right by them, and we'll see how that works. But anyway, we're so grateful, and we thank all of y'all for your support, and we would never be here without y'all. And so many people have reached out to us, and I mean, I have to tell y'all.
Now, the part where she talks about, we weren't sure we were going to get all the convictions that we got, and obviously happy that they did. I mean, if you followed me following this case, then I felt the same way. And of course, it was a wonderful blessing and surprise to see that all the convictions came through, right? And I also like listening to her talk about the people they've met along the way, because when you look at these cases and the tragedy that has come in them, and then you look at things that happen along the way to justice, like this. Look at all the people that have come together, the communities, the nation, really the world on some of these, right? People from everywhere, as they'll talk about, to come together to express compassion, empathy, love, support. And those are all beautiful things that come out of the rumbles of tragedies like that we watch here.
Really?
JJ, I love you. Papa, wish you were here in other circumstances. Tylee, Papa loves you. Tammy, I never met you. Tammy, you are part of our life. Tammy, I am sorry for what happened to you. My heart hurts.
My word. I mean, rip your heart out and throw it on the ground. Oh my God, bless his heart. I mean, and again, seeing Kresha, Kay, so supportive around him, it's that's so heartwarming to me, right? I love seeing that. And just hearing the heartbreak in his voice, my God. And I like that he always includes Tammy in what he talks about here. And these were, if you don't watch it, this was, they were asking what his words to JJ and the victims would be. And what a bittersweet day, right? To finally see justice, but obviously, the fact that all this had to happen to bring to justice, it should never have happened in the first place. And so again, absolutely beautiful words and very inspiring, and they always are, coming from all the survivors in these cases.
It was if there was just three, it would be the trifecta. I don't know what this is.
What if Chad Daybell wants to take a plea agreement? Would you guys be on board at this point?
Life
It depends on what the agreement is, but absolutely.
Life without parole?
Yeah.
Woo, there it is.
Yeah.
Yay!
Okay, now a couple of things. First of all, the cheering was for the detectives walking out in the background, and hats off to them. Now, this part was very interesting to me because this is something that we've wondered here a lot is, okay, here we go. Chad Daybell's up next. Number one, is he going to be like, "Ooh, God, he's got the death penalty on the table, right? What's he gonna do?" And so I was like, well, I'm curious to know what Larry and Kay and them are like, what's their vibe? And so to hear them saying like, absolutely, we're open to that. Life without parole, you heard Larry say, life without parole, go for it, right? And remember, they have tons of cases coming up after this, right? This is nowhere near being done. And let's use that as a segue to move into another topic of discussion with this case. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the statement that was issued by Brandon Boudreaux and his family that came Sunday following the guilty verdict. Now, the link to it is in the description. I'm just going to post up one little section of it here to talk about. Now, for those who might not be familiar, Brandon Boudreaux was married to Melanie Boudreaux at the time. She is now Melanie Pulowski. She's married to Ian, and Melanie is Lori Vallow Daybell's niece. So let's go ahead and talk about that. Okay, so it's up on the screen right now, and really they go in here and they talk about, we mourn the loss of all of them. We mourn Charles. As many have seen, he was truly a good man. He loved his family. He showed his love by providing so much for so many who knew him. He was always quick to make all feel welcome, and he never let anyone go without. He was quick to spoil his family. He is missed every day. Now just pause for a moment. This is one of the things that I'm talking about that really hits me with these cases, and especially the one with Lori, is look at what she had. Look at all that she had. A man who loved her, and not only loved her, but also spoiled her. Loved her children. I mean, the whole 9 yards, and look at what became of it at her hands. Let's continue. It says, we wish all of you could have known the good times our family shared. Disney, beaches, football games, and holidays are treasured memories. As we have watched silently while complete strangers rally for justice, we thank you for standing for the truth. We mourn with the Daybell and Douglas families. We never met Tammy, but she and you have been in our most sincere prayers. We can't imagine the pain of your loss and hope that this process might help with healing and closure. And lastly, many people have been involved in these events, some by choice, others perhaps not. Regardless of how they are involved, we encourage all to consider that this world is already so full of divisiveness. We advocate for forgiveness and privacy where possible. We live by the hope that the worst part of our lives does not become who we are. We do not condone nor encourage less prosecution for those accountable, but instead encourage true change and accountability for those involved. We hope for sincere forgiveness for those affected, that they might not carry the burden of hatred with the pain of loss. Now, I thought these were powerful words here, and a very interesting statement, especially on the divisiveness and, letting something becoming known as something like the worst part of your life, that type thing. I thought this was a beautiful statement, and again, I like that they included everyone. They mentioned Tammy, they mentioned Charles, all of this. Now, remember, an attempt was made at Brandon's life, and as of today, Justin Lum did a tweet, and I'm actually going to read from my phone from it real quick. So it says, Lori Vallow was indicted by a grand jury in Maricopa County for conspiracy to commit the murder of Brandon Boudreaux more than a year ago. Vallow was charged on 2/24/22. The late Alistair Adele was the county attorney at the time. According to the indictment, Vallow and her late brother Alex Cox agreed that at least one of them or another would engage in conduct constituting the offense of first-degree premeditated murder. On 10/2/19, Gilbert PD says Cox shot at Boudreaux outside his home from the back of a Jeep. Now again, this, as we know at this point, is coming down the pipeline, and so let's segue into that real quick. So now here on the screen we have this. It's just talking about what's getting ready to take place, because remember, Lori has all these other cases coming down the pipeline. So once transferred, Lori will await her sentencing hearing, which could take months to schedule. Victims' families often get the chance to speak directly to the judge and perpetrators during these hearings before it's announced how long the sentence will be. After sentencing, however, Lori will be facing 2 new cases in Arizona. She is charged with the murder of her then estranged husband, Charles Vallow, who was shot and killed by her brother Alex Cox in Chandler on July 11, 2019. It was initially ruled as self-defense until details about the deaths of her children were discovered, along with communications between Lori, Chad, and others. Now, on this right here, I cannot wait to get to that sentencing to hear the victim impact statements, and also to see the look on Lori's face as they are being read. we might have to take a damn poll on, number one, what kind of hairstyle we think she's going to have. You know she's getting gussied up, right? She'll get gussied up for it. But what she will be doing during that time. What she will be doing. Because I think that she'll just be stone-faced, looking ahead, not any kind of reaction, because I think this is going to be a major, like, I don't know if narcissistic injury or ego injury, whatever that type vibe, word, whatever, but that kind of thing is going to be going on with her, because it's going to be a hard pill and a hard slice of humble pie for her to swallow. Okay, now let's continue. In addition, the Maricopa County Attorney's Office said it intends to prosecute Lori for an indictment in Gilbert on October 2nd, 2019. Now, it says although the prosecutors haven't specified, this may be connected to the attempted shooting of Brandon Boudreaux, who was married to Lori's niece Melanie, now Pulowski at the time. Boudreaux said he had arrived home and saw the muzzle of a gun from a Jeep parked nearby, then a bullet shattered his car window but missed him. And this is just down at the bottom, an actual quote from that. After the defendant Lori is sentenced and transferred to the Idaho Department of Corrections at the request of MCAO, the extradition process will begin. The extradition can take from several weeks to several months. Because this is a pending matter, this office will not provide any further comment, including any charging decisions made by this office. So again, this is what I'm talking about. She has all these cases coming down the pipeline. Now, do I think that she would plead out to any of them? I don't know. Because personally, I think that she's going to have the death penalty on the table for some of them. And I think that's where she's probably headed, to be honest. But of course, you don't ever know how these juries are going to do and what will happen in court. And it depends on like what the victims' families are okay with, right? You might find people saying, yeah, plead her out, let her serve her life out in prison and be miserable. I mean, we'll have to see. So that is to be determined. Now, let's use this now to segue into one last family statement, and this is the Cox family statement. Now, you can pause to read or you can go along with me here. It says, we want to thank each person that has offered kindness, support, and prayers on behalf of our family and the other victims' families. That support is deeply felt and appreciated. We sincerely appreciate the time and dedication of the jury in this case. We also appreciate all the time and effort that dedicated law enforcement attorneys and Judge Boyce has taken to adjudicate this case. We acknowledge countless hours put into this case and also time away from their families. We thank you. We fully accept the determined decision in our justice system. We understand this is just one step towards justice for the beloved victims in this case. Despite today's verdict, we are left with our grief and sorrow over the loss of Tylee and JJ, who are irreplaceable. Our family will always feel this loss and will never be the same. We will continue to honor their memories to the best of our ability. We send our deepest sympathy to Tammy's family and Charles's family, who have also been devastated by the loss of Tammy and Charles, who are also irreplaceable. We share your grief and offer our heartfelt prayers for healing for all who have been hurt by these horrific crimes. We hope the outcome can offer you a measure of peace and comfort. We will continue to firmly put our faith in Jesus Christ and seek His mercy and grace for all those involved. Now, I thought this was a nice, basically diplomatic type statement to come from them, right? Acknowledging that they are okay with this, this verdict, and acknowledging all the members of families and the victims and themselves and whatnot. Because when this first went down and you saw members of her family coming out, I'm thinking specifically of Janice and Summer and people like that, and standing, this didn't happen and all that, it kind of put a bad taste in our mouth, right? Well, then when we heard more evidence coming forth, with Summer's phone call to Lori, that type thing, you kind of saw a different perspective of that. So I do feel that it was necessary for them to put something out there like this. I think that the public, the people who followed it, needed to hear this coming from the family, and I think that it's the appropriate thing, because it is true. These people you can't replace these people. I mean, that's just like we heard Al said. You can replace things, but not people. And really, from both of these cases, it's such an example of these monsters absolutely taking for granted everything around them, the people, their loved ones, the world, life itself, their lives included, and being so casual about others' lives, and so easily taking them for whatever the motivation was, whether it was a fit of rage or whether it was power, sex, and greed, whatever it is. There's never a good reason for it. Now, if you're still watching, I appreciate it, and drop some sofas down there to let me know. And then also let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments section. We'll continue to follow the updates and obviously the other cases coming out of this with Lori and Chad and whatnot. So until we do gather around the sofa and start talking about those, I'll see you there.